In the beginning, there was nothing. Then the world began, and there were molecules and ferns and dinosaurs, and that was good. Next, human beings came along, and they discovered fire, the wheel, and sex, and that was better. Soon there were pyramids, the Magna Carta, gunpowder, spaghetti, the Spanish Inquisition, powdered wigs, John Quincy Adams, and penicillin. Talk about your progress. Until at last, on January 8, 1935, Elvis Presley was born. And then finally it was the 60s, and that was cool. Because in 1969, two hip dudes with an idea, no money, met two young men with unlimited capital, and they decided to have a big outdoor rock and roll festival in upstate New York, which is mighty pretty country. First it was going to be Saugerties, but Saugerties was too small. So they thought of Bushkill, Plattkill, Beaverkill, Battenkill, and finally settled on Waukill, but they couldn't get a permit in Waukill, so they found a dairy farmer named Max Jasker and decided to have it on his farm outside Bethel, which is 90 miles from Woodstock, but they called it Woodstock anyway, probably because that's where Bob Dylan lived, and besides, they had printed the posters already. So they booked a bunch of great acts and put up lights and speakers on the stage, and when 500,000 people showed up, they had to make it a free concert.
The Woodstock Music and Art Fair was more than just a festival. It was a movement, a revolution that brought together over 500,000 people for 3 days of peace and music. Between the dates of August 15th to the 17th and linking into the morning of the 18th. Many festival goers and people around the world alike say that this was the biggest and most influential concerts to ever happen. It was so countercultural. It was revolutionary. And believe it or not, Woodstock is one of the most influential events to ever happen. Young friends John Roberts and Joel Rosenman had money and they wanted something to do with it. They put an ad in the New York Times that stated, "Young men with unlimited capital looking for interesting, legitimate investment opportunities and business propositions." At the same time, friends Artie Cornfield and Michael Lang were planning on creating a recording studio near Woodstock, New York. But they needed help funding it, so they came up with an idea to host a music festival. Their lawyer suggested that they hit up Roberts and Rosenman and discuss their idea. The four 20-somethings met up and sparks flew. In January of 1969, they created the company Woodstock Ventures. In the first few meetings with this company, they planned Woodstock. They planned where it was going to take place, which was supposed to be near Woodstock, but ended up being in Waukill, New York. That's not true, but we'll get to that. The reason why the concert was not held in Woodstock was because residents didn't really like the idea, and that eventually happened in Waukill as well. They also discussed prices. It would be $18 prepaid or $24 at the gate. Now in today's money, that's $120 and $150.
I'm going to some place where I've never been before.
Now, just as the first video stated, there was problems selecting a venue. It was supposed to be in Woodstock and then it was in Waukill, but then they dropped out, so they had a problem. Everyone panicked. Thank God, though, a man named Max Jasker offered his 600-acre dairy farm in a little town called Bethel in New York. Everything was set and the concert was ready to go.
Coming in from London from over the pole, flying in a big airliner, chicken flying everywhere around the plane. Could we ever feel much finer? Coming into Los Angeles, bringing in a couple of keys. Don't touch my bags if you please, Mr. Customs Man. Yeah.
By the time of the concert, 180,000 tickets were sold, and there was an estimated 200,000 people coming. Issues came up when over 50,000 people started camping out days before the concert. So, without knowing how many people were going to show up, creators of the event decided to have a free concert. This announcement had two major effects. Woodstock Ventures was going to be out a lot of money, and second, more than 1 million people were heading towards Bethel. Most estimates suggest more than 500,000 people attended Woodstock. Highways and surrounding areas were full. They were basically just parking lots. It got so bad that artists actually had to get brought in by helicopter.
Check will be accepted at the gate. B at the Woodstock Music and Arts Fair, August 15th, 16th, and 17th in Bethel, New York.
Well, the New York State Thruway is closed. Isn't that far out?
Woodstock began at 5:07 p.m. on Friday, August 15th, with singer and guitarist Richie Havens. For 2 whole hours he played all the material he knew. He He kept getting put back up on stage, and finally he had no material left. So he improvised. He later called the song Freedom. Looking around at the 500,000 people in the crowd, he thought of
freedom, 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 freedom.
Artists like Jimi Hendrix, CCR,
I see the bad moon rising. I see trouble on the way.
Janis Joplin,
Music's for grooving, man, and music's not for putting yourself through bad changes. You know, I mean, you don't have to go take anybody's shit, man, just to like music. You know what I mean? You don't. So if you're getting more shit than you deserve, you know what to do about it, man. You know, it's just music. Music's supposed to be different than that.
The Who,
People try to put us down, my generation, just because we
Joe Cocker,
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Joe Cocker, let's go for Sunday.
Let's all get strong.
and Jefferson Airplane.
Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You gotta find somebody to love.
Were just a few that performed. Altogether, during the 3 days of peace and music, 32 acts performed. Although there was a lot of sex and drugs, there was rock and roll to keep a balance. Underneath the mess of the 500,000 people, the food shortages, drug usage, and all that sex was a weekend that changed the world. Even though the 420-somethings were over $1 million in debt, and they had over 70 lawsuits against them, they were absolute legends. Thankfully, they had recorded a documentary of the whole thing, and when it came out in 1970, it was a giant hit. With the money they made from that, they ended up being about $100,000 in debt from the $1 million. When it comes down to it, the fact that Woodstock happened, the fact that it was legal, and the fact that it didn't get shut down at all is a miracle. A miracle interlaced with peace, happiness, and music.
I'm a farmer. I don't know how to speak to 20 people at one time, let alone a crowd like this. The important thing that you've proven to the world is that 500,000 kids, and I call you kids because I have children older than you are, 500,000 young people can get together and have 3 days of fun and music, and have nothing but fun and music, and I God bless you for it.
Financially, this is a disaster.
But you look so happy.
I'm very Look what you got there, man. You couldn't buy that for anything. Sure. This is really beautiful, right? These people are communicating with each other. That rarely happens anywhere anymore. Right. It has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with tangible things. You know, like, you know, you have to realize the turnabout that I've gone through in the last 3 days, in the last 3 million years, you know, that I, meaning us, all of us.
What do you mean the turnabout in the last 3 days?
Well, look, just to really realize what's really important. What's really important, the fact that if we can't all live together and be happy, if you have to be afraid to walk out in the street, if you have to be afraid to smile at somebody, right? Well, what kind of a way is that to go through this life?